Hey everyone! So I was doing a painting recently and I used a technique that I hadn't used in a really long time, I think since college, and it involves saran wrap, and it's just, I think, a cool way to break you out of your routine of how you paint and give you a little inspiration for new ideas. And I think this would especially be really great if you're a watercolor artist who is kind of going through a little bit of art block, or you're just struggling with what to put on the paper, or you are feeling a little low energy but you just want to create something. This can really help with that, so stick around if you want to see how I create this painting and how this technique works. So starting off, I take my brush and I dip it in a lot of water and I just put down lots of different blobs of water and color. And this is just a fun exercise. This is one of the fun parts to do, is just don't think too much about it. Just put the water down and then just start adding in paint of different colors. I think it's good to think about the types of colors that you want to use for this. I was thinking I really want something, because I love earth tones. A lot of my paintings involve earth tones, so I gravitate towards brown and green. So I just honestly had a lot of fun with this part. You can tell that I was listening to fast-paced music, I think. I don't know exactly if it's showing, but I feel like you can tell my paintbrush is moving so quickly, like that's not sped up. But anyways, so now you grab, after you've done that wash, you grab saran wrap and then you cover your wash that you made. Once you have the wash that you want, you then take the saran wrap, crinkle it up, and then just place it over top. And just crinkle, crinkle until you have a good amount of crinkles. And you can see here what the result was from that. And so then you let it sit for a while until it dries. So now you peel off the saran wrap and you have really interesting shapes that were created. I then went into Photoshop, and you can go into any editing program if you want, but I went into Photoshop and I just drew on top of that what I felt like drawing. You can see my mock-up here. So now I start sketching my mock-up that I had created, and I just start sketching that over top of my watercolor wash. Take your time with your mock-up and just kind of play around with the shapes and see what comes up for you. To me, I just thought it looked really rocky. It was giving me like boulder rock vibes. So, and I knew that I wanted to draw nature on it because it's just one of my favorite things to draw. So take your time and think about the colors that you think would be nice with your wash. And I chose a robin because, first of all, I did mushrooms in the mock-up and I wanted them to be orange to pop off of the page a little bit. So, and then I was thinking I want a bird on there, just because I think it would be nice to kind of like put something on top of the rock. So I was brainstorming birds, different types of birds, and coloring goes really well with mushrooms, so that's why I chose the robin. I really wanted to go with a grounded earth tone look, so I thought that with the robins and the mushrooms and the rock looking stuff and the moss, which is in my mock-up too, it would look really grounded. So that's the vibe I wanted to give off. And next, I am pulling up all of the water that is overlapping on the bird and the mushrooms to create room for me to add paint back into it. I started adding in the base layer of the mushrooms with just like a base layer of yellow because I wanted that warm hue to shine through. And then I start layering it up, adding in darker and darker reds. Of course, it's good to work light to dark, but I also go over top with some thick white gouache or thick white watercolor for some of the highlights too. I don't always do that. I let the page shine through for a lot of it, but sometimes it's easier actually to go over top and add thick layers of paint. So that's a technique that I like to use a lot. I think it adds a lot of dimension when you do that. I feel that the mushrooms actually took more steps than I thought that they would, because mushrooms are so simple, but as I just went about painting them, I realized they're very simple, but they do have a lot of little micro details in them, and I wanted them to come off of the page a little bit, so I did use a lot of layers on them, and it took me longer than I thought it would to create the mushrooms. Yeah, I feel that adding the moss in the mock-up, when I added that moss, I actually was feeling a little unsure about the mushrooms, and I was telling my husband, I was like, I don't know about these mushrooms, like I think they look okay, but then I realized I still needed to add the moss, and when I started adding the moss, I felt like it really helped with the composition. It helped the composition a lot and broke up this painting a lot, so I think that really helped. And then of course adding more mushrooms really helped to give it more of visual interest. It helped to give it more visual interest to kind of make your eye go through the rest of the painting as well, and not just on the top part. So then I added in some moss on all the mushrooms, because I realized I don't think mushrooms can just grow out of rock. I think there needs to be some sort of organic matter there for them to really grow on. If you're a biologist, let me know if that's true. But I don't think I've ever seen mushrooms grow just like purely off of rock. There's usually moss or something. So, and then I had the idea to add some little rocks coming off the bottom, but then I was like, I think I'm just gonna make them dark spots. So now I like to dab my eraser on top of my drawing to pull up some of that pigment before I paint. I just started building up the layers, starting from the really bright yellow into the darker parts of the beak. Yeah, I think one of my favorite things to paint is like fur and texture on like birds and mammals, like dogs, and any kind of like feathers and fur, I think is one of my favorite things to paint. I don't know, I'm not sure why, it's just, it feels effortless to me, and I always feel like it creates a nice, like really like lifelike look. So I just kind of go through the bird one section at a time with my painting. And birds are another one of my favorite things too. I just found that I love painting animals quite a bit, and I think it's because you can make it your own. You have a reference, but you really can stray from that, and you can still tell what type of animal it is, but you kind of get to play around a little bit more with those details. You don't have to follow your reference like to a T, and there's a little bit more freedom. So I think that's another reason why I do love painting animals so much. So I start with adding a layer of light gray, and then you see I'm putting darker pigment down and just dabbing that onto the already wet paint, and that kind of creates shadows. And I like to let that do its thing and let that dry a little bit, and then before I go back and add more. And just starting to, yeah, like I add a little bit more just now. And I think it's a great way to, I think it's wet on wet. I think that's what that's called, but it's just, you have like a bit of a wash and then you add more pigment to it, and it really creates a nice gradient in that area. So now I just kind of follow my pencil with the feathers on the wings and follow the pattern that the wings created. I find this to be relaxing, very relaxing. Because my drawing's already there, I just kind of need to, at that point, all I have to do is follow what I've already put down and follow making darker parts on those shadows. But I found that it created a kind of a really cool pattern with these wings. As I was putting the feathers down, I realized the pattern looks kind of neat. I thought that was really cool. I asked Google what bird represents grounding because I wanted the whole painting to feel really grounding, and robin was like the first thing that came up. So I thought, oh my gosh, and robin goes perfectly with my painting anyways because the color is perfect. So yeah, I'm happy with that. But anyways, like, just chatting a little bit. If anyone tries this technique, I would love to hear how it goes for you. I think it's really fun, and I do think that you could make, hypothetically, like you could make a ton of different watercolor washes with this technique and come up with 10 completely different paintings based on how the water pulled up in the saran wrap and how differently they all looked and the different colors. I just think you could create some really cool stuff with this. Anyways, I'm really building up those darker parts of the wings, and then finally I start on the colorful chest part of the bird, and I go in, it's very like bright orange, but I will darken it up as you'll see later. But I like to add like a really brighter color on the very base layer so that those warm hues really shine through in the end. But in the robin reference photo that I was looking at, there was like a really cool pattern that was created in the chest area. So as you can see, I'm leaving the paper to make that white pattern. I'm not going in and drawing that white. I'm just letting the paper shine through, and it kind of creates a cool pattern that is like a feather pattern. And then I go in with more darker red, brown hues. And the bird, I think, is starting to come to life. It's starting to feel like a bird. Any bird lovers out there, let me know what is your favorite type of bird, because I would be very interested in that. I love birds. I think the older I get, the more I love birds. And on the lower part of the chest area, or like the belly, whatever you want to call that, it's a lot darker because it's underneath as well, so it's going to be more shadow naturally. And so I just add more of the dark color down on there. And yeah, here I am again with the thick white paint. I go over and just kind of brush some more of the highlight details on. And right now on the bird, it's really just fine-tuning the body. I pretty much have the general look, but adding in little micro details like more texture on the feathers in different spots, and then adding, here we are with more dark shades coming into the chest, just to add depth. Finally, I got to the part of the bird I was neglecting, the feet. Or the talons. So I don't really have a special rhyme or reason of how I did this. I just kind of went with the flow, but I added in first really dark paint, and then at first I just kind of like get the general shape of the feet to make sure that it's blocked out and everything is in the correct shape that it needs to be. And then of course going in with the highlights, and it's really making those talons pop. It truly is really a game changer to add those highlights. Towards the end of the painting, I realized that it needed a little bit more of a pop, so I went back and I added more darker areas to the bottom of the rocks and to the moss to make those darker areas feel like they're more sunken in and there's more dimension. And here we are, the final painting. is complete. I love, you could see like the texture of that wash, and you can see a lot of the texture in that and a lot of the details. So here you are. I hope you enjoyed the process of watching me paint this, and if you wanna see more videos where I show my technique and exactly how I do things, let me know in the comments, and please give me a like if you liked the video, and have a great day, and I'll see you next time.